everybody. Welcome to Lunch Therapy. Today is Interview Friday. I have a great guest for you today. I'm so lucky to have Jerry Corley on the show. He is the comedy doctor. We're going to learn some stuff about comedy. We're going to learn some stuff about him. He's been a comedian for a long, long time. So let's get into this thing. Behind me, by the way, is a little vacation there, a mini vacation for you. This is our longtime hummingbird, Guignol. He is in Florence. I believe that's Florence, Italy. Sent us a nice background to get us into the show today. Highly appreciate it. Let's get into this thing called Lunch Therapy. Firenze! Is that what it's called? Is that what they call it? The Duomo. That's right, Florence Henderson. There are two of me today. That would have been the hummingbird camera, but I think the hummingbird probably knocked it over. So let's get into these breathing so we can get to Jerry Corley and get the funny going. Oh my God, it's about time on this show we got something funny happening. Jeez. Cappy Adaship says, Hoy. Hoy, Cappy Adaship. Molto bene pasta. Hopefully that's not some kind of pornographic statement because I don't speak Italian. Friday already? I know, they just keep coming around. This is Howard Aronin here. He's a comedian. Howard, maybe you can give us some tips today because we're going to be going through what's funny anyway. What's funny? Something smells funny. I think that might be Todd Lee. Is that possible? Yes, Guignol is in Florence Henderson. I don't know. We'll have to deconstruct that joke. See what Jerry has to say about it. I don't know. I'm skeptical. All right, let's breathe because this could be really stressful trying to figure out comedy because comedy it's a science and it's an art and it's very expensive. In through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it. Let it go. Jerry doesn't strike me as a meditating guy, but I'm going to find out if that's what he does. If he does any of that meditating, I don't know. Sometimes we need to do that to keep our mind right. In through the nose, out through the toes. Hold it. Let it go. You are not just a drop in the ocean, you are an entire ocean in a drop. I didn't make that up. Hoy, Camila Lopez.
Takes me as a meditating guy.
Hoy, hummingbirds. He could be a meditating kind of guy. Yeah, maybe. That's Bloss. Bloss, I can hear you in and out. It's really weird, but what can you do?
Me in and out?
Oh, there you go.
Like a burger?
I thought you were at In-N-Out Burger. Today, we're looking at some capybaras from the Twitter feed Budengebeiden. Everyone likes to see capybaras taking a vacation, jumping in the lake.
It's a very
There's a
strange
meditation type, Joel. In through the nose, out through the toes. That's a good question. Let it go. All meditators don't have to have a man bun, right? Or a...
Oh no.
Hoy there from Twitchy Land. Wow, you're in the Twitch. I love it when people are in the Twitch, I tell you.
That sounds weird.
Comedy Doctor is in. All right, let's get on to this thing, because without, further ado, I'm going to do a little thing here. Let's switch up the mic to the comedy mic. Wow, there's kind of a storm going on in this weird AI dome that I have here. A lot of meditators are bald, says Todd Lee. Interesting. That is a very interesting observation. Perhaps true, perhaps not. I don't know. So it's great to be here today on Interview Friday. My guest today has been all over the world, being ridiculously funny. And sometimes he does stand-up, too. He's coached many of the great comics. Only 3 have filed restraining orders against him. He wrote for the Jay Leno show. Yeah, there's some applause. He wrote for the Jay Leno show, Tonight Show, for 8 years. And sometimes they would even write him back. I think one of them was maybe the restraining order. I don't know. His name has been in lights all over the world in the most prestigious comedy venues. Turns out Jerry is a pretty common name for a comedian, so it's not really that surprising. But, it's a fun fact, and that's what we're all about here today on Lunch Therapy. On recommendation of the great comedian and fitness trainer Dale Dimkovsky, who was on the show, today's guest, Jerry Corley, is known as the Comedy Doctor. And he has been a stand-up...
Joke doctor.
There he goes. The joke doctor. I should have written it on my hand. No, he's actually like a very well-known comedy coach. This little thing in the beginning here is going to be interesting because maybe we can analyze it. I don't know. He did write for the Jay Leno show. He did write for the Tonight Show. This is all true. He's performed all over the country, everywhere from church basements to huge stadiums. He's warmed up sitcom audiences, written films, and he runs the Comedy Clinic? Comedy Clinic? Okay.
You got it.
Yes! Yes!
You got one right.
God, man, really.
We wrote it all down for you, Joel.
All right, let's give a warm hummingbird welcome to Jerry Corley.
Thank you. That's a hummingbird right there.
Interview Friday. Joe Marshall and Jerry Corley.
All right, here he is. And there's Bloss for some reason. Hey, Bloss. All right, welcome, Jerry Corley. This is crazy, huh? Welcome.
Yeah, I love it. I'm a meditating guy. I like to meditate.
Oh, I love that. Yes, I love that.
That's how you keep your mindset straight.
Yeah. What does meditating do for you? I mean, and what is your practice?
Well, my practice is I meditate once or twice a day. I call them naps.
Yeah.
But before, what I like to do is when your mind is in theta, right? That's when it's the low level frequency that we have halfway through gestation until the age of 7.
Yeah.
Right. That's when you absorb all of this information like a sponge. So usually 15 minutes after you wake up or 15 minutes before you go to sleep, or the last 15 minutes before you go to sleep, that's when your brain slips into theta, that low frequency. So that's a great place to sort of sit there and meditate in. So I like to practice that and see how long. It's almost like tantric theta rather than tantric orgasm. You're sitting there on that peak, riding the curl of that wave. If you're going on an orgasm from a scale from 1 to 10, you're hitting number 9.5 and just sort of sitting there. But it's like in this case, you're on theta, and you're kind of in that just before you slip off into sleep, and you kind of hang on to that as long as possible. So I like to sort of meditate and stay in that state for a little while, and then that's where a lot of free thinking goes on, clear thinking. It's like when Einstein said, "How come all my best ideas come to me when I'm in the shower?" Because you're not thinking of anything.
Yeah, are you a Joe Dispenza person? Do you listen to Joe Dispenza at all?
I've listened to Joe once or twice.
Yeah, he talks about that state and how they can actually put electrodes on your head and actually see what state you're in. K that's very cool.
They can I learned about that from the book Peak by Kay Anders Erickson and Robert Poole, who talk about they were the founders of the field of psychology of expertise, how we learn.
That's incredible. You seem to me like a little bit of a scientist of comedy, because the way you break it down, and you actually talk about joke structure, like you say there are 13 comedy structures, and you also talk about what elicits the laugh response, but from a almost scientific or clinical kind of way of looking at it.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you think about it, when I first started in comedy, I was one of those kids that had to take apart his toys before it to figure out how they worked, right? Just to really figure out how they work. And so when I first got introduced into comedy, first of all, I was a funny kid, kind of like I remember this guy in my sixth grade homeroom class, and he would do these wordplay things. Every time the teacher would say something, he'd quip on the word.
Yeah.
And he'd always get a laugh. And I was kind of thinking the same thing. So I started to quip on the word. Now we're in both corners of the class in the back of each of our classes.
Yeah.
And so the teachers, we were honors students. So the teachers would laugh, but they would also feel interrupted. But they couldn't help it, because if the class is laughing, guess who they love? The people who make them laugh.
Yeah.
So it's like, if the teacher got mad, the class would get mad at the teacher for getting mad at us.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's two levels going on there, because when we laugh, we release the same exact chemistry that's released if you fall in love.
Oh, interesting.
So the dopamine, serotonin, vasopressin, oxytocin, not Oxycontin. Sorry, Rush Limbaugh. May he rest in painless sleep. But that chemistry, it's also the same chemistry, by the way, if you shoot heroin. When you're laughing, you're in a euphoric state, right? So it's like, that's why if you're at a party, you hear laughter in the other room, you have to go in and figure out what it is. You want a hit of that. You want a little dopamine hit.
Yes.
So understanding the science of why people laugh, to me, I thought was essential to really learning how to be a comedian. When I first took a comedy class, I was an actor. Yeah. I was a musician. I played professional soccer for a short period of time.
You did? Professional soccer?
Yeah, and I sucked. So
you can't
I actually
suck
injured
and be
my
a
knee.
Professional, though. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, well, I shredded my ACL, but shredding the ACL is not funny.
No,
sucking is.
Sucking
right?
is.
So
right.
it's like if I'm up there on stage and I say I played professional soccer for a short period of time because and I point to my knee, everybody's going, oh yeah, he hurt his knee, and I was like, because I sucked. Then they're gonna laugh at that, and nobody really cares you got your knee blown out.
Yeah.
They just want to laugh, right? Mm-hmm. So I played soccer, and then after that career ended, I was also playing trombone in a horn band because I read that you want to attract women, you play guitar, and I played the trombone. Right. So you know how hot that was.
It's super hot.
Yeah. And that comes with its own wah, wah. So I was also acting. My dad was an actor.
Your
if
dad
you ever
was
watched
an
the
actor?
show
Really?
Murphy Brown, that
you
was
grew up
on
in
for
New
10
York?
years.
Is that right?
Grew up in New York.
East Islip?
And then moved to Los Angeles in Central Islip. Islip. Near East Islip. And so then when I was acting, I was doing commercials, and then my hair started to recede in my 20s, and like 26 started getting it, and I stopped booking as many commercials because I had a full head of red hair, and I was booking a lot of stuff. Yeah. But then all of a sudden my hair started to recede, stop booking. It's hard to sell beer when you have a receding hairline and a baby face. And then I felt, oh my God, I'm Ron Howard. So then I moved into, I saw, I wanted to try this comedy thing, and I saw this ad to take a comedy class. It was originally by a guy named Greg Dean.
Greg Dean, been on the show.
In LA. He had one of the first comedy classes. Yeah. And so I learned one thing over there. And then I learned, wait, there's a structure. There's more. Why do we laugh? And I just started to study comedians. I met George Carlin. You did. And Carlin has basically said he knew with 98% accuracy a joke was funny before he stepped on stage.
From what I understand, he would write his whole routine, like sometimes an hour set, and then go perform it. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So
it's like
unusual.
and when he said he knew with 98% accuracy a joke was funny before he stepped on stage, I said, how do you know that? He said, because it contains all the elements a joke needs to be funny. And I said, what are those elements? And he said, you got to learn those on your own, kid.
Really? That's great.
And then after a glass of wine and a painkiller, which was his drug of choice at the time, he said, I think the reason I say that is intuitively I know what they are, but I can't verbalize them. Mm-hmm. I've been doing this for so long. I just know. He said, but my dad used to label everything. Maybe that's what you could do. You could like label it all and maybe put it in a book so people can learn it, because it's really he said, it's a magical art form.
Well, don't you feel like some of us, I mean, as kids growing up doing comedy and being witty in class and stuff like that, sometimes you feel like maybe you don't want to overanalyze it because you just don't want the magic to go away?
That's a misnomer.
Yeah, I'm sure.
The magic is that. Why would you learn how to play guitar?
Right. But I don't know how these chords work.
Like that's when, if you don't know how to
it.
play, that's when the magic is not there.
No,
when
I
you
think
know how
it's
to play,
great
that's when the magic is there.
I think it's great because it gives you something rather than just relying on the magic. That kind of intuitive feeling that you have for something being funny. You can actually have some structure to rely on, like an actor does. You have a method or a process as an actor, and so you don't just go in there and just allow the magic to happen. But what happens if the magic is not happening? You have all that.
Then you could go back to the mechanics, right?
Yeah.
There's definitely the intuitive side, but the intuitive side becomes stronger the more you know what you're doing. Same thing as playing guitar, right? So it's if you were playing piano, when you know the mechanics of how that instrument works, you can go so much farther with it. If you have structure, you can build anything you want. If you don't have structure, whatever it is, it's going to collapse.
Yeah.
So the same thing with comedy is like understanding, like, for example, I understand, like if you watch Anthony Jeselnik, he knows that I'm going to misdirect the audience. I'm going to take them all the way, make them think this is going on, and then pull that rug out from under them right away. Like and it's a technique he uses it's called a reverse.
He
just build anticipation, then shatter it. Oh, that's his main go-to.
But isn't it almost too much sometimes? Like there's a comedian that will get
think his
stuck in a rut
pacing.
like that.
I think, man. I think his last special. And I love Anthony Jeselnik. I think he's a really great writer. He was on the Tonight Show for a year. He wrote for the Tonight Show for a year, and he never got a single joke greenlit.
Really?
Never got a single joke because they were funny jokes, but they weren't appropriate for Jimmy Fallon because Fallon was the host when he was writing over there.
And he was also a student of Greg Dean, I believe, too.
He was. That's right. I remember talking to him about that, and he was like, he said he taught me. And that's the structure. That's the first structure Dean taught was the reverse structure. Create an assumption, shatter the assumption. And it's like, but the most commonly used technique used on the Tonight Shows and the late shows is what's called incongruity. That's using associative humor, taking two dissimilar ideas and then finding the similarity between the two. That's the most commonly used one on.
But that's not.
And it makes it easy to write.
That's not like an analogy, though, or is it similar to an analogy?
An analogy is a device that imposes two dissimilar ideas. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, you can almost take any idea, find a contrasting idea, and then find the associative similarity between the two. Like, for example, if I said my ex-wife, who was an alcoholic, she was a lot like the signal on a smartphone, and people go, huh? Why? Yeah. So it creates tension, just like storytelling. Yeah. Why is your ex-wife, who's an alcoholic, like a signal on a smartphone? I don't see the similarity. Yeah, you could usually find her at least one bar.
Yeah, right.
Right.
And so and you have to kind of think about it, and then you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And it has to be true.
That ties it in. So
it kind of has to be true too.
Yes, and here's the secret to it. Here's like what somebody wrote a great joke at the beginning. They dropped a joke, and there was a tree. Does a tree poop?
Yeah.
And he said, that's where do you think number two pencils come from? And I was like, oh, that's a good associative
right?
joke.
All right, let's hear some applause for Todd Lee. All right, I like to hear it. We're learning.
That was right at the beginning. I saw that joke. I go, see, that's a good associative joke. I'm going to bring that back, and I'll remember what he says, as opposed to how Joel forgot everything I wrote to him. So. Or maybe my assistant wrote you comedy doctor, and she has known me for 40 years.
I'm an idiot.
And it's
I'm an idiot.
And I never called myself that. That was like when I founded the writers forum at the Friars Club.
Yeah.
They had these, like, it was just me and a bunch of guys, right? We were at the Friars Club, and we used to just go there Monday nights, have dinner and drink. Yeah. And I said, we got the cigar room over there that nobody uses. Why don't we go write jokes?
Yeah.
And so it was like me and 3 comics. We started this thing every Monday night, and then it was wound up me and 13 comics. And then me and 22 comics, and a lot of them were veterans.
Yeah.
Right. And been doing comedy much longer than I was. And so they used to come in with these jokes like, I'm going to lose that joke. It's not working. I said, no, you're just missing a beat right here. All you need to do is give us a little more information. Now it will make sense. And the audience will connect that idea. And, so they start. So like the joke works now, and these were guys who had been doing it a long time, and they couldn't see that why the joke wasn't working. And they go, "How do you know this? How do you see this happening?" because I did what George Carlin said. I started to really dig deep and find out what was connecting those ideas.
Yeah.
And then, so all of a sudden, when I walked in on Monday nights, the guys would start yelling, "Hey, it's the joke doctor. He makes jokes well.
Oh, that's great.
He fixes the jokes."
Yeah.
You know,
The joke
and
doctor.
so that's kind of stuck with me over the years. And so the joke doctor is now just a thing that I use, the joke doctor, because I can fix a joke. Show me a joke that's not working. I'll figure out what's wrong with it and fix it.
Were you a member of the Friars Club? That's gone now in LA, right? But
in LA, that's gone.
York,
it's been
right?
gone for years, which is sad because it was such a cool place just to hang out, you know, and be a part of so especially the people that were there before you, the legacy people that were part of that group.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, just kind of the money dried up. I think as you know, we came into the new generations of comedians and they became more isolated, more like single souls rather than working together to, you know, in a synergistic way. And I think, you know, guys used to just enjoy each other's company. Yeah. And it's like then you see a lot of comics, they sort of just drifted into the corners of the rooms and they sit there and, you know, gotta love comedians. They are rogue people. We are up there alone and it's vulnerable and you get a lot of people who are insecure. That's why when you go to open mics, you don't get laughs for the most part because most comics, they're afraid if they laugh, somehow it's taking the funny away from them.
Do you think that's why? Or I always think it's because people are thinking like, what am I going to say when I get up there? And if
that too. Well, and
also
that too, but
there's the like feeling of like, that some people I think have where they're like, oh, this guy's funny. What am I going to say? You know what I mean? Like it starts to be like that. So it's not fun for them.
Yeah. And so there's a couple of different things going on. One, they're sitting there but if you're prepped, if you did your homework and you're prepped and you're ready to go up and do your mic, you don't have to sit there and being in your notebook because, you know, treat other people as you would like to be treated. Right. So if I'm up there on stage, I want people to give me a little nod or, you know, even this would be great. That's a green light in an open mic situation.
Right.
Because if I'm sitting there and waiting to go on, I'm paying attention, giving respect to the performer on stage, you know, but I think, you know, a lot of comics, they get there and they're just working on their own thing and they don't take a moment. That's why some of these places, there's like in LA, we've got the fourth wall concept, right? They have one in North Hollywood and one in Hollywood.
I'm a big fan of the fourth wall. We've had Joe Menente on the show, and I think it's just a great thing.
Yeah, Joe's great.
And he's so great. He's the best audience, too, at the whole place, you know?
When he's there, he gives love to the comedians. He'll laugh some of the hardest at some of the jokes. And so I think what he does when he has the fourth wall concept is you go pay $5 for 5 minutes, and the comics go in there. And they basically lock the door and you stay there for an hour. So the 10 comics go on and they each perform 5 minutes and then they leave. Yeah. But everybody's there watching everybody else perform. And I think I think that model works really well. Plus you're paying enough $5, so you're invested in it. And if you invest something in it, you pay more interest to it. You pay more attention to it. If you're just jumping in there and I, you know, a lot of comics say, I don't like that model or these Dan Bringer shows and all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's pay to play. I go, yeah, you brought it upon yourself. How many times you go into an open mic where the guy at the bar and grill is giving a stage space for comedians to do an open mic and you don't put anything in the damn till. You don't pay $5. You don't you don't buy a beer. You don't tip the waitress.
It used to be you have to go around. I mean, still you can do this, but it used to be you have to go around. You had to pay with your time. Like it wasn't an hour, and you didn't know whether you were going to get up, and you put your name in a basket. Maybe they called your name, maybe they didn't. Maybe you spent your whole
maybe they didn't.
Your whole night.
And that's like 3 hours of your life.
Crappy place.
4 hours sometimes. Just sitting there, you know. And yeah, sure, you're learning if you're observing and you're watching other comedians, and you know, I like to watch comedians and sit there and go, okay, what's a tag or a topper that could be added onto that joke? How could they fix that joke? Because every time I would add a note or fix on a joke, and sometimes I'd go up to them afterwards, hey, I love that joke you did about the Hummer. What if you did these tags? Yeah. You know, and they'd be like, oh, that's great. And then I'd tear it out of my notebook and give it to them. I said, you could use them if you want.
Really?
And they'd be like, and if they were really laughing and seemed to like them, I'd offer them to them. If they were just like kind of rolled their eyes, I'd go, yeah, all right, you know, take it or leave it. I don't care.
Well, these places are sort of like
be helpful.
Yeah, these places are sort of like the Friars Club was. You know, I mean, like they're a place for us to commune, and also for us to
so much fun to be able to sit there
and
just shoot the shit with other comedians, share ideas. oh, so-and-so's got a gig.
Yeah.
It's like, how do I get a hold of them? Do you
Yeah.
mind if I, if I call them and drop your name? That kind of thing. So the networking was happening. It was all like, because there's enough work out there for everyone.
Yeah, there is. And if you're funny, we need more funny people. It's not like there's a dearth of funny people. There's a lot more there, but I think I used the wrong word. But anyway, it's not like there's so many funny people we can't have enough of them. You know what I mean? We need more. We need more funny people.
We definitely do. I mean, how many times you go to an open mic, and every comic up there is really funny?
Never.
Right? Exactly.
Absolutely never. And we need more funny women too.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. And I'm a huge supporter of
sausage festival.
I grew up in a family of, strong moms, strong sisters. So, that female presence is so important because what guys don't understand is so many comedians out there that are men that are like, women aren't funny. I said, well, then you're not paying attention, dude. Because it's like, people, and I did a course on how Hannah Gadsby writes, and people are like, Hannah Gadsby's not funny. I said, stop listening to Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle's great, but he's wrong here because she knows how to write a joke. And there's this bit she does where she talks about being heckled online by somebody. He says, you fat, ugly bitch, you wouldn't be raped in a men's prison on a Saturday night. She goes, I said it was kind of harsh, didn't I? And then she goes line by line and eviscerates this heckler. Yeah. And it's brilliant. Yeah. And it's like if people knew how to take apart a guy's statement and prove each line wrong like a lawyer would in a courtroom,
right.
It was just really just surgical the way she went after him. She goes, yeah, and I could probably get myself in shape, right? I could lose some of this weight that I have. First of all, to keep me from falling down. She's like, but why should I be the best Hannah I should be? So I can get raped in a men's prison on a Saturday night? And she calls it back at the end, just like boom, crushes it. And it's like, if you studied that, you'd understand how to respond in a roast battle. And I said, she really knows how to write. Now, here's this. Yeah. What was interesting was my assistant went and looked at a list of the people that bought my book, Breaking Comedy's DNA. Mm-hmm. And Hannah Gadsby's on there about 6 years ago, right? 7 years ago. But I was like, oh, that's very cool because she knows how to structure a joke. She knows how to tell a joke. She knows how to she knows how to make sure that joke pops. And she was doing a TED talk and actually explaining some of these techniques. And I go, wait a second, that verbiage sounds familiar. That's what made me want to see if she bought a book because it sounds like something I might say.
Okay, let's move on here for a second. We're going to talk a little bit more about the specifics of structure.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
Specifics of structure. So here we are again. So I've got this list of your 13 major comedy structures. I don't know whether you can rattle them off or what, but it's double entendre. I don't know what's wrong with me today. Reverses, triples, incongruity, simple truth, superiority, paired phrases, slapstick, observation, recognition, compare and contrast, comedic irony, benign retaliation, and paradox. Does that cover them? Is that all 13?
That covers them.
Yeah.
That's it.
So
you have the updated list.
You came up with this just over years and years of study, or how did you come up with this list?
Actually, I found a book by Melvin Helitzer called Comedy Writing Secrets. Now, Melvin was a journalism professor at Ohio University, and he took Gene Parrott's work. Now, Gene Parrott was Bob Hope's head writer. And he took Gene Parrott's work of comedy writing step by step, and he sort of broke it down in more layperson's terms and wrote a book on it. And he taught a humor class at Ohio University, had a 2-year waiting list. But I got that book, and he was labeling some structures.
Yeah.
And so I took sort of the basic, like the laughter triggers, and looked at what the psychologist he cited said. And I said, well, that's not true, but this is true because none of those guys have the experience of actually being on the stage.
Yeah.
They do it from a cubicle, right? So it's like, that's really not a great way to test. So I would take some of the theories, go on stage, and I started to relabel some of them. But that was the foundational. That's where I started. I go, oh, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
And when Carlin said, why don't you label it? I said, oh, this is the plan, man. This is what I'm going to do.
So smart.
So
yeah,
that's where I started, was researching that and researching Gene Parrott's work, and then really started to develop from there. And then 30 years on the road, 43 weeks out of every year, hitting those clubs, I would have these theories. I would write them down, test them out that night in front of an audience, test them out again the next night, and then take notes in the hotel room how it turned out. And so to use those stage as my lab to sort of like iron it all out.
That's cool. So you mentioned those psychological laugh triggers, just so people know. It's surprise, superiority, embarrassment, release, incongruity, recognition, ambivalence, configurational, and coincidence. So these are things that make people laugh, right?
Yeah.
What's configurational?
Configurational is Mitch Hedberg, Stephen Wright.
Oh.
I spilled spot remover on my dog. Now he's gone.
Yeah.
It's one of those, it's the thought thing, Mitch Hedberg, I love escalators. The escalators can never break. They just become stairs.
So why,
it's like,
why
so
is
you have to think about it for a second.
Like it's a configuration. Thank you, Bonnie. You would reconfigure it in your mind when the person like says the statement. Is that?
You have to configure it. You have to figure out exactly what they mean. Sometimes like, Spike Jones used to do a song that was like, one day my baby fell out the window. We thought that his head might be split, but good luck was with him that morning, and he fell in a barrel of shaving cream. Be nice and clean. Anyway, we're configuring that he's going to say a rhyme.
Oh, okay. We've already
instead
configured
he
the rest
changes
of the sentence,
it to shaving
and now
cream.
they configure it a different way.
Yes, sometimes you could say something without saying it, and the audience figures it out. Like a friend of mine, Eric Michaels. Eric was one of these guys. He was at the time, he was overweight. He had very serious social anxiety. So he would shine all the time.
Yeah. He's
now beat that social anxiety. He doesn't sweat at all. This guy's as cool as a cucumber.
Right.
Like comedy helped him get there.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, but he used to do this. He goes, I live in West LA. I'm gay. He said, I hate living in West LA because all the men are chiseled and tan. And I hate living in West LA.
Yeah.
And he didn't have to say it. We could see it, but we configured it, right? And so if the audience gets to participate in it, and they solve the problem too, that's surprise. Oh, wow, what a coincidence. So those laughter triggers, they don't have to work by themselves. They can work with other psychological laughter triggers. So there's not ever just one thing going on. There's multiple things going on at that time. And so that's one of the things that they get to be involved in that. If you can include them in solving the puzzle, then they're like really excited about it. Oh my God, yes, yeah. And they get giddy if you enjoy the audience. Like used to do a joke about my wife. My wife, she now, there's a rule. She said, you can no longer use me in your jokes. You can no longer make jokes about me.
Really? How could you do
so
that?
Now I have a girlfriend. So
you got me on that one too. I was like,
now you don't know whether or not the jokes are really the jokes about my girlfriend or jokes about my wife, or do I really have a girlfriend? See, now that's up in the air. You'll have to configure that. So anyway, she was a large-breasted woman, right? And remember, my friend, my writing partner at the time, we were writing a screenplay. We wrote the screenplay Stretch over there. Starred Patrick Wilson, Ray Liotta, Jessica Alba, and Chris Pine were in that movie.
Wow.
So that was my goal by the time I was 50 to write a screenplay and sell it. And so I co-wrote it with, I wrote the original drafts, then co-wrote it with Rob, and then Joe Carnahan got screenplay credit because he directed it, and that was kind of the deal. Like he would get that credit if we were going to get the film made.
Yeah.
So
that says something about it.
Anyway, it was still, we got a film made, and from that was able to get a lot of other meetings and sell some other products. So, but anyway, Rob comes in one day and he's using the word geez.
Yeah.
And I'd never heard him use this word geez. Where's this coming from? And so I wrote down Geez, geez. What could geez be? I want to write a joke about geez.
Yeah.
And so I thought, geez could be G could be G cup, G string, G force, G money. And I thought, G could be the cup size of the bra of a large breasted woman. G's so I said, let me write this backwards now. I said, so my wife is large breasted. She thought I was psychic when I first met her because I guessed her cup size. Yeah, she walked in the room and I was like, geez. Now, the audience will sometimes figure that out.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's actually more fun for them to figure it out than it is for just it to be a surprise. Because they're like, geez, yes, and they get to play.
Right.
Now, and so some comedians go, well, they figure out your joke, so it's not really a joke. I go, sure it is.
Yeah.
Were they having fun? Were they laughing? Were they enjoying it?
Yeah.
Fuck yeah, it's a joke. You know? And it's like, now it's like, and other veterans will come up and go, that's a great joke, man. Because they get to participate in the solving of the puzzle.
Well, you walk a little bit of a line there, because if they don't solve the puzzle,
then you hit them with the surprise.
Then you hit them. Oh, okay. I get it. Yeah.
Now, what's interesting is I tried to refine the joke and economize the joke.
Yeah.
And I took out the words cup size. My wife is large breasted. She thought I was psychic when I first met her because she walked in the room and I went, geez.
Yeah.
But people don't easily associate G cup.
Yeah.
Because they don't hear it a lot.
Yeah.
D's, double D's, C's, right? We're used to hearing those. You know, how does a stripper, what kind of grades does a stripper get in college? Well, she starts out with double D's and that gets her the A's. Now, that was just off the top of my head.
This is really interesting, Jerry.
Like
thanks for
like
doing
that,
this, because it helps us also see how you think about it, like how you pull it all together. You know,
right? It's the puzzle. It's the scientific. So then I said, okay, what is making people? Why does a comedian get up there on stage and he can wander on for like 5 minutes and nothing?
Yeah.
And then you get another comedian get up there and all of a sudden pop, 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 pop. What's making that happen?
Yeah.
Structure.
Yeah.
He's hitting certain psychological laughter triggers that the other guy just wasn't hitting. And so I had to figure out what are those laughter triggers. So studying thousands and hours of comedy and watching and seeing how it's put together, I was like, oh, yeah. Jerry Seinfeld uses this. Jim Gaffigan uses this. George Carlin uses this. Jerry Seinfeld basically is George Carlin with a different voice.
You also do a great job on your YouTube channel of like breaking down people's comedy and talking about the structure.
I love
so
helping comics. I think comics are the greatest. Just the great. We're they are, like I said, the cowboys, right? They're the last, like the rogue comedians, man. And it's like, so if I can give any kind of like help to comics and they get value from that and are able to write better jokes, that's a win for everybody, man. That's like making sure the karaoke is in tune. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Thanks for the applause. That's my assistant, Boney. All right, let's get into this. I want to ask you something else here. We're moving along. I don't know what that is, but it's a little change. What I'd like to say to you is, how personal do you get with your comedy? So we're talking a lot about structure and a lot about the technical part of it, but do you get personal in your comedy?
Oh yeah. Like, I remember I was having sex with my girlfriend and, one night, and she goes, Jerry, every night you seem to be able to get up on stage and do comedy, but tonight you can't get it up for me. And I was like, hang on, I got to write that down. So you see, the thing is like, I get personal, but I make it a joke.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I'm trying to teach my daughter how to tie her shoes, which is weird because she's 22. And actually she's 5. She's 5 years old, trying to teach her how to tie her shoes. And she's like, Dad, I can't. And I said, how many times have I told you not to use that word? I am not your dad. Yeah. You don't want to say that to a kid because that fucks them up. She's in jail. And, but you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'll take something that's personal and I'll turn it into a joke. I don't want to sit there and drag it out like I do a joke about my mom dying and I make it a joke. I remember she was the greatest lady I've ever known, right? And it's like she was diagnosed with cancer 6 weeks later, dead. And I was writing for The Tonight Show and I didn't feel funny anymore. And I felt really sad. Then we had a memorial service and, we're Irish and Native Americans. So we had there was a live band and there were lots of booze and double booze because that Native American and Irish thing. It was like, I have VIP seats waiting for me at any AA meeting. I walk in that meeting. They're like, hey, Running Bear O'Reilly, we have a chair for you in the front row. So, but we were just drinking and celebrating the life of the person we were so blessed to have in our lives. That's very Irish. And when you're at a funeral, one of these funeral events, somebody always says to you, hey, what do you want him to say about you at your funeral? A guy came up to me and he had a bottle of Jack Daniels, and I took a drink from it. And I was like, what do I want him to say about me at my funeral? I want him to say, hey, look, he's moving. Anyway, so the point is, in that moment, I didn't have anything.
That one, come on, we don't deserve some applause.
I didn't have anything in my head when that one came to me, and it just popped in my head. And I go, I bet you that's my mom saying, "Get back to work." You know?
Yeah.
So that was so that became that was a coping mechanism for her death, right?
Yeah.
So it was like, how do you cope? I use humor to cope about stuff. Sometimes the humor is inappropriate.
Yeah.
You know, if something happens, I'll make a joke about it. And it's like when Kobe Bryant died. I mean, I was teaching a class, and there were one student in my class that had to leave. He's like, I'm sorry, I got to go. Because we were right in the middle of analyzing material.
Yeah.
It was a class we teach called 45 Days to 45 Minutes. There's like 4 students in the class, and over a period of 6 weeks, they turn in about 5 to 8 minutes a week. And by the end of the 6 weeks, they have about 45 minutes worth of material.
Wow.
And they cull it down to 30, memorize it, and then shoot it in front of an audience. So now I have a videotape of them doing 30 of all brand new material. So it's like, it's really just a fascinating class, but we were in the middle of it. And while I was projecting somebody's material on the screen, they saw my email and it said, Kobe Bryant is dead.
Oh, man.
And I was like, wait, what the fuck? And so I opened it up and we read the story, and you know, we were all down about it, but you know, we still had class. And one of the students, he had to leave. He said, man, Kobe got me out of bad times, man, just believing in Kobe. And so he said, I hope you don't mind. I got to go.
Yeah.
And so I was like feeling really bad for him. And of course, you know, Kobe's a legend, right? So I said, we got to write a joke.
Really?
And they're like, no, you're not going to write a joke. I said,
Really?
no, we got to. We got to write a joke. Is Kobe going to heaven or hell?
Said too soon for Kobe jokes. And I was like, oh, man, this is really down. You know,
but I said, does Kobe go to heaven or hell?
Yeah.
It's like, what would that look like? In heaven, there's 3 seconds left on the clock, and the coach makes sure that ball gets passed into Kobe, who hits the 3-pointer with 1 second left.
Yeah.
Right. It's like in hell, the coach makes sure the ball gets to Luke Walton.
Nice.
So you see, how can you make a joke about Kobe when he just died funny? That's how.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Can you do it? Yes, you can.
This is
so you see what I'm saying? There's never something inappropriate. How do you do it so it works?
Yeah.
Is that
Bloss
reverse?
is asking if that's a reverse.
That's an associative, and it's what's called a paired phrase. So it's you saw that in the list there, the paired phrases.
Phrase.
I'm mirroring the phrase I'm basically saying, repeating the event, right? So in heaven, coach makes sure the ball gets into Kobe. In hell, coach makes sure the ball gets into. So in a way, yes, it is a reverse, and really good observation there, because what we're doing is when we mirror a phrase, when we say the phrase over again, coach makes sure the ball gets into. So the first time I say, in heaven, the coach makes sure the ball gets into Kobe. In hell, coach makes sure the ball gets into. Once we repeat that phrase, the brain has automatically made an acute decision that it's going to end the exact same way it did the first time.
Right. And we're thinking,
and instead,
but I'm even thinking he's going to miss it, you know?
Yeah. Instead, that was the easy way to go.
That's the easy way to go, right? Yeah, and
but instead I go Luke Walton,
because we don't expect.
And how many people saw the name Luke Walton, and you saw a picture of Luke Walton in your mind's eye? Those Lakers fans definitely do, right? So it's like, and you see the jersey, it says Walton on there, and if you see that, that's why you pick a specific character that they can pop the imagery with. So it's like, the better the imagery. This is something I learned from Gene Parrott. He said, the better the imagery, the better the humor.
Yeah.
So like Bill Burr does a joke. He talks about Arnold Schwarzenegger being a great man. And it's like, the premise is he's talking about how men get in trouble because of their dicks. And he's like, it's like, we got, guys, what are we doing? We got this thing between our legs that can ruin us in 7 minutes or less.
Yeah.
right? And he said, how could you say Arnold Schwarzenegger's not a great man? How many of you could move to Austria, learn the language, become famous for lifting weights, marry into their royalty, run for public office, become a movie star? How many lifetimes would it take? I'm on my third attempt at Rosetta Stone Spanish. So
right.
What that is a compare and contrast.
Yeah.
He's done this. I can't do this.
That's good.
And why didn't he say online Spanish or Spanish course? Mm-hmm. Because Rosetta Stone Spanish, how many people see that yellow box with the black font? Yeah. The imagery pops up there. It's bam, specific. That pops that joke.
That is really good. What is you call something superiority? What is superiority?
Yeah, see, this is one of the most misunderstood concepts. It's both a laughter trigger and it's a structure. Mm-hmm. Now, superiority, and this is where most comedians fail, it's making the audience feel superior. That's all they want to do is feel superior. Because you can talk about something embarrassing. That's where self-deprecation comes from. Yeah. That's why you go into an audience, you make fun of the town, the previous town you were in. Yeah. They love to do that because they feel superior. You can do that within the room and say, wow, this side of the room's laughing harder than this side of the room. Yeah. And now it becomes a little bit of a challenge, a game, because they want to feel superior. So it's like, that's why when we do jokes, we pick on the president, we pick on our in-laws, we pick on our exes, we pick on our parents, we pick on the principal, we pick on the teachers, we pick on the boss, because we pick on a corporate behemoth, right? McDonald's or something, because we want to knock them down a peg. It makes us feel superior.
And you don't want to pick on the people that, maybe are struggling or something, people that are having.
Yeah, you punch, the rule is punch up, right?
Unless it's you, right? Yeah, punch up. That's really important.
Like me as a man, I wouldn't pick on a woman without recourse or reason. Mm-hmm. Right? So if I do a joke about my ex, I'm going to start it out, my ex who cheated on me. Mm-hmm. So my ex who cheated on me called me on Halloween. She was like, Jerry, I don't know what to pretend to be for Halloween. I said, why don't you just dress normally and pretend to be in a committed relationship? And so it's like, so that gets, so it's like, but if she wasn't my ex who cheated on me, like, why are you picking on her? We don't even know her yet.
Yeah. But
in a very efficient way, I can say she cheated on me.
They're the person who cheated on them with yours. So like we're all in the same.
Exactly. But people also relate to that. They feel superior because to the audience, I put down everybody who ever cheated on them.
Yeah.
What about? And so you watch a comedian do that, you could see them like, yeah, I resonate with that, dude.
Yeah, totally.
Superiority.
What about like buffoons and being like, thinking that you're superior than everybody else? Is that something to, Steve Martin used to do that where he'd be like, I'm so funny, or he would say how great he was on stage.
But that becomes, it's almost a caricature, right? So Jeselnik does this really well. And it's become part of his act. Daniel Tosh has accomplished this too. Mm-hmm. But Jeselnik, he always has that little sly look on his face because it's mischievous. He's not serious. Yeah. Right. He'll be like, so I live in LA, nice house, obviously.
right.
And he does a little side thing, and that's part of that's part of what he's developed as his persona. First of all, he comes up with amazing jokes. Mm-hmm. So we already have a lot of respect for him. And then he does that little cockiness thing, and we know it's over the top. So we see the absurdity of it, right? And we buy into it. Daniel Tosh the same way. Yeah. But one of my students said, why does Daniel Tosh get away with just being just this arrogant asshole? I said, because he's not really. Because he always opens his show with self-deprecation. Mm-hmm. He'll be like, thank you for applauding for what my parents are still disappointed in. And then he says, if you've seen me before, I'm not good live. And then he goes on the attack for a little while. And then he goes, if you read my Twitter feed, you'll know I had diarrhea today. Yeah. Again, stumbling blocks. So most comedy is about just trying to get from point A to point B and encountering obstacles. So if you knock yourself down, it's like when I talked at the beginning about my accomplishments, mm-hmm. I said, I played professional soccer for a little while. I better knock myself down. Otherwise, I'm an arrogant piece of shit, right? To the audience, because it's comedy. This is not rock and roll
and I've seen people do that at like the fourth wall where like somebody comes up and talks about how much money they made, like playing poker or something like that, and how rich they are. And then you're kind of like, you don't really want to be there. You hate them. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like,
that's not a comedic character. If he was a rapper, we'd go, yeah. What is up with that, bro? Yeah, you tell us more about how cool you are, because we want that on our rappers and our front men and the rock and roll band.
We want that in certain people, right? We want that in certain people.
We want Flea up there completely naked playing the bass at at Woodstock.
Then you can be like, wow, look at that cool guy. Yeah. And then you kind of aspire to it or whatever. You don't feel like, but with a comedian,
that's what you ever see. Did you get to see that clip of Madonna?
No.
On the Tonight Show trying to do comedy?
No, I've never seen that. I got to see it.
Yeah, it's bad because she's playing the ingenue. She's playing the front woman for a rock band, not a comedian.
She has that problem with acting too, right? I mean, she has the same kind of problem.
Yeah, it's a bit arrogant, and there's no vulnerability there.
I saw also, along those lines, I saw Brad Pitt. They were giving this award in France, and he came out as kind of a surprise, and everybody was so excited to see him there. I think he was giving an award to David Fincher, and he had all these jokes, and they were probably funny jokes if a comedian was telling him, but because it was Brad Pitt, it sounded almost a little mean. He was saying these things about David Fincher that he would assume that the audience would be with him on, but they weren't. And you could see him kind of, knowing that he was bombing. And also maybe French people don't have the same kind of sense of humor, where you say something.
Well,
like, obviously...
French is France is a little different, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I did comedy in France, but I never really hung out there enough to see some of the other clubs,
Yeah.
I just sort of did a one-off there. And then that was one of the places I worked. And then, but I didn't really spend a lot of time there. I wish I would have spent more time there.
What is it like going around the country? Oh, you got a question? Yeah.
Okay, quick question.
Boss.
Remember Jerry Lewis was the king of comedy in France?
Yeah,
And I remember when that movie came out, and also he was the biggest thing in France.
Supposedly, yeah.
And that was, to me, I looked at it like, because he was self-deprecating humor. He was always bumbling. He was always funny because he had problems and had to work through them. At the end of his movies, he ends up accomplishing his original goal, but that journey was just him messing up all the time.
But don't you think French people love physical comedy as well? I mean...
I think so. I think you look around the world, right? You go back to even the UK, right? We love to see the buffoon. We love to see the guy fall over and, really not just like encounter an obstacle, but fall to the ground.
Yeah.
If you look at some of the sketch shows in the UK, there's a lot of physical comedy that goes on there. And yet they have some of the most wordplay comics that I've ever seen, really good ones like Stuart Francis, who lives in the UK, originally Canadian. Jimmy Carr, they do a lot of double entendre, a lot of wordplay, but their sketch comedy tends to be pretty physical. And if you look around at third world countries, industrialized, where the comedy is just starting to catch on. Mexico, big and broad comedy, right? If you listen to the radio shows and stuff. In fact, there's a show in Spanish, it's like The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. It's syndicated. It's one of those popular syndicated radio shows, I think on Telemundo radio. And four of the guys that worked that show, including one of the producers, took one of my weekend writing workshops. We had a blast. These guys caught on so fast, and they were producing this material. They go, oh my God, now we have we have a technique we can apply to write these jokes. And all of a sudden they just really flourished in there. Yeah. And it was really neat to see that they really grabbed onto that. And it's like, it's like you don't even need it to be big and shocking and bold. Yeah. You can just create an assumption and shatter it through especially through an act out, and pow, it really does light it up. And so to watch those guys do it, for example, when people say, oh, you want a dick, all this audience wants is dick jokes. I like to get up there and go, actually what they want surprise. And so you could create surprise without, it's like, Jay Leno's monologues were great. Thanks. Appreciate it. Sometimes they weren't. Because here's the deal with Jay. No, they fired me eventually. But that's okay because they fired me because I did a Pope joke the day the Pope died.
Oh.
So it's just kind of like the Kobe thing. It was in the writer's room.
Did he do it, or you just wrote the thing and they were like, "That's inappropriate"?
I just wrote it for the room.
Really?
But there was a little politics going on. But what was interesting was that I forgot what I was talking about. Talking about Leno's monologue is like middle of the road. What I learned over at Leno, he didn't like the edgy stuff because he he really knew he knew his audience. His audience was middle America. He says they're looking at TV over their feet. They don't want toxic. They don't want challenging. They don't want anything too pointed politically. They want middle of the road, fun, easy before they go to sleep. Stephen Colbert, on the other hand, Stephen Colbert is very left-winged, edgy, harsh. In fact, that's what boosted his ratings when Trump was president. When Colbert took over, he was bleeding viewers. And he was the head writer, and he was also the showrunner. And then they brought in a showrunner from CBS Morning News, the news director from CBS Morning News, to be the showrunner on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. And I was like, really, a morning news guy?
Yeah, why would they do that?
But he did something brilliant. He basically said, Stephen, what do you want to do? He says, I want to go after Trump. I said, but we don't do that in late night. We stay middle of the road. He goes, well, you can't, it can't hurt. You're losing viewers.
You could see that when that changed too. Well, and also Stephen Colbert, if you're going to hire him, I mean, that's what you're going to. That's the strong point,
and
right? I mean,
that's when he started
point.
coming into his own. He felt it. One of the jokes he first did was, he says Donald Trump's mouth is a holster for Vladimir Putin's cock.
What?
George.
And I was like, holy shit! He said it's a cock holster, basically. And I was like, You did what on the Late Show, right?
Show?
But they bleeped cock, but we all got what the joke was.
Wow.
It was very pointed, very blue. In fact, Trump actually had the FCC investigate it.
I bet.
And the FCC said, no, it's fine. It's late night.
Oh, wow. That's so interesting.
They let it go, man. Wow. And it's like, but his rating spiked after that because people were looking for a release valve.
Yeah.
So Trump won the election, but still a full half of the country hated him. So they needed something to release their tension, right?
Yeah.
And Colbert was that outlet. Now, Jimmy Kimmel, if you watch Jimmy Kimmel now, Kimmel has found out the magical formula for doing the politics without being too cutting. Mm-hmm. He's made it playful, silly, and fun. Yeah. And it's like, really, I like what he's doing over there. He's now, last time I checked, which was about 2 weeks ago, he was in number 1 position. Colbert was in the number 2 position in the ratings, and Fallon was in number 3.
Wow. How did you get a job writing for Leno?
Ready? Here's the story.
Yeah.
So I was doing a joke I was doing a routine at the Laugh Factory. Mm-hmm. Now I noticed in the audience, Jerry Seinfeld was there, Larry Miller was there. They were also did spots.
Yeah.
And the head writer for Leno was there.
Yeah.
And so I did a joke and it got a good laugh. The next night it showed up verbatim on the Tonight Show.
What?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
What?
Whoa.
Yeah, true story.
Wow.
And I told my dad, I said, people called, my phone was ringing. Oh my God, Leno just did your Domino's Pizza cell phone joke. And I was like, yeah, I heard it. And it's like, and I told my dad goes, write a letter. I said, I'm not going to write a letter, Dad. Nobody writes letters. So I wrote a letter.
Yeah, of course.
And so 2 months later, I get a call from Jay Leno out of the blue. And I heard it. Yeah, hi, this is Jay Leno. And I'm thinking, one of my friends does a really good Jay. Yeah. And so then finally he leaves the number. I call back the number. He goes, this is Jay Leno. And I was like, I'm talking to Jay Leno.
Yeah.
And I said, hi, Jay Leno, Jerry Corley here. He goes, oh, I'm glad you called. So evidently we got a letter that said, I stole your joke. I said, well, you didn't read the letter because I never said that you stole the joke. You're one of the hardest working men in show business. Yeah. Like I said that one of your writers stole the joke, and I know who it is because that person was at the show that I did the joke at. 24 hours later, it shows up verbatim on the Tonight Show. What are the odds? Yeah. He goes, slim to none.
Slim to none, right?
And he goes, probably didn't do the joke again because it wasn't funny. But and I said, oh, open mouth, insert foot, Jay. See, you're a politician. There's tape. So I go back and look at the night. It's the only joke that gets a laugh.
Yeah. Wow.
And he goes like, so we had a little, I was talking to Jay like it was a heckler, but we're both from the East Coast, right? Mm-hmm. So we were kind of getting along that way. Yeah. And I said, Jay, look, my job, I have you on the phone right now. My job is not to get off this phone until I have a job writing for you.
Wow.
Nice. And he goes, man, nobody's ever said anything like that before. I said, so I love what you do over there. I love your show. I think I would be a good fit. He goes, well, I can't use your act. I go, well, you already did. And he goes, "Oh, touche." You know, I said, "Remember, there's tape, right?" So it's like, so I said, I wouldn't do jokes. You can't do jokes about my dad. Nobody would get them.
Yeah.
And he says, I said, "I do jokes about current events." He goes, "Well, you got to be up on the current events." I go, "Is that how this works?"
Is that why they're current events?
Right. Now, here's the thing. I was already being mentored by Gene Parrott and a guy named Bob Mills. I was taking weekly, like private coaching courses with these guys because I wanted to learn how to write for late night TV.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, my dad said, "You got to get a coach." And I was like, "There's no coaches for comedy." And then my mother gave me a Reader's Digest. And in the back was an ad for a correspondence comedy course. And I found out Gene Parrott was teaching it. And he's right there in Studio City. And I'm like, I'm in Chatsworth. Would you want to do like a one-on-one thing? So we set it up. I'd go there every week and they'd give me assignments and I would start writing. So I was writing every day. He says, "You got to treat yourself like," and he gave me the best advice: treat yourself like a professional now. Otherwise, nobody else will. I go, "What do you mean by that?" He goes, "Get up every day and go to work." I go, "Where am I going?" He goes, "You're writing jokes every day, like you're at work until you get a job. And then your job is to look for a job getting work." And so 5 hours a day, I would sit down 7:00 in the morning. I'd have CNN on, 3 newspapers. I'd start going through, writing jokes. And then he said at the time, before when I first started, Johnny Carson was the Tonight Show host. And so he said, transcribe Johnny's monologues, then try to add your own punchlines. Then next day, take the news, start with the headlines and start to write jokes that sound like Johnny Carson. So that's how I kind of started. And then, so I was writing jokes. So Jay said, "You got to be up on the current events." And I said, "That's how." He goes, "For example, this morning, Oahu, Hawaii lost power to the entire island. What would you do on something like that?" And I was like, my head went, "Mom, thank you." Because I had already written the joke on that.
Oh, it's great.
It was on the Chiron, right in the lower third, right there on CNN. I took that, and we write in threes, right? We speak in threes in America, like life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So when we talk in threes, what does threes do? It builds a pattern. And we could take 2 of those in the pattern. Once we hear that pattern starting, we can shatter the pattern with the third one, right? So it's like, so the first thing I was like, I listened to the news story. Oahu, Hawaii lost power to the entire island. Traffic lights were out. Court buildings were shut down. And about 150,000 kids stayed home from school today. And I went, okay, there's 2.
Yeah.
Traffic lights were out. Court buildings were shut down. Now I have to come up with a third one that's related to electricity going out, but it's absurd. So I went, let's stick your finger in a socket. Hair goes like this. Who has hair like this? Don King. What would happen if he had no electricity? His hair would be flat. And why would he be in Hawaii? He was on vacation. So I wrote the joke. This morning, Oahu, Hawaii lost power to the entire island. Traffic lights were out. Court buildings were shut down. And a vacationing Don King was seen with flat hair. And so when Jay said, "What would you do on something like that?" That's what I said to him. I said, "Oh, I heard about that. Oahu, Hawaii lost power to the entire island. Traffic lights were out. Court buildings were shut down. And a vacationing Don King was seen with flat hair." And he goes, "That's funny. You just came up with that?" Just came up with it.
You were ready. You were totally ready.
Yeah, I was
You
ready.
wrote it
Yeah.
this morning.
You know,
So he
cool.
was like, he didn't know I was writing it this morning. And it's like, and I'm going to keep that mystery open that I wrote it right there on the spot for him.
Of course.
And it's like, so he said, and I started as a contributing writer. That night he had Helen Kushnick, his manager, send me release forms to sign, to send back. And I started submitting jokes.
Wow. So you also
that's dark.
teach this kind of thing to comedians as well. You have a course on that, right?
Yeah, I teach late night writing, and I teach stand-up, and I teach writing for stand-up. And I have weekly courses called the a la carte courses. Every Monday, I started this during the pandemic, and they just caught on. Every Monday, I take one subject and kind of drill down it for about 3 hours and get them writing jokes. And it's like on different concepts. And it's like, and then evaluating some of the jokes. It's a lot of fun.
Also, all that writing that you do makes it so if you do have to come up with something on the fly, you're much more likely to come up with something because it's a natural.
Let me tell you something. Yeah, man. There's a technique called the listing technique, where if you have 2 dissimilar ideas converging, which is the original definition of a joke according to Socrates or Aristotle. So Aristotle said the definition of a joke is 2 dissimilar ideas converging. Now, I said this one time on a YouTube video, and Greg Dean called me and threatened to sue me.
He did.
He's actually like, I'm going to sue you. That's mine. I go, 2 dissimilar ideas as yours. It goes predates you a little bit, Greg. It's like it goes back to Aristotle. I said also it was recoined by a man named James Beatty in 1473. He was a Scottish philosopher. Wow. But you can go ahead with the lawsuit if you want. But
they didn't sue him,
we'll take it to court. I'll embarrass you. What's that?
They didn't sue.
I said they didn't sue him. 1400.
Yeah, Aristotle sued him. Right. He's going to pass it forward.
Yeah. There's a lot of relatives out there of Aristotle.
Yeah. But if you have 2 dissimilar ideas converging, ultimately a joke is taking 2 ideas and converging them. Then you have the possibility for a joke, and they can show up in so many different ways. Like, for example, if I say to you, a man in a Texas prison was charged with hiding a gun in his rolls of fat.
Oh my God. Yeah.
True story, right? It was in the news.
Yeah.
A man in a Texas prison was charged with hiding a gun in his rolls of fat. Who are we assuming the man is?
A fat guy.
A big fat guy. I don't know.
Fat guy. But what's his role at the prison? What does he do?
Oh, he's a prisoner. We're assuming he's a prisoner.
That's our assumption, right?
Yeah.
But who would be like the last person in the prison you would assume who would be hiding a gun in his rolls of fat?
The prison guard.
The warden. Yeah, goes in higher. The warden. Right.
Yeah.
So prison guard would be one. And we could go to warden, right? It's like, a man in a Texas prison was charged with hiding a gun in his rolls of fat. Yeah. And it's like, it's Texas, so it's no surprise that the man was the warden, right? Right. So you can say it like that. So that's a reverse, Raz, right? So it's like, then you have, right? And then you have associate. Like, so what do we have in there? All these different elements that are associating to each other. You have Texas, you have guns, you have fat, right? And so we can start with that, and you have a prison. So you say a man in a Texas prison was charged with hiding a gun in his rolls of fat. I'm not going to say how fat he was, but the gun was a bazooka, right? So then because I'm listing everything guns over here in my mind, right? But if I put it on, I like to put it on the page and really list that stuff out. Like, using subcategories of people, places, things, words, phrases, cliches, events. And it's like, if I list it out, ChatGPT is really good for this now, too. They'll give you fast lists.
I love that. And it's not really cheating. It's just leveraging what we have in the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I go to the internet anyway to look for more data on stuff, anyway. Right? Mm-hmm. So if chat's limited though, because it's only up to like 2021 time, and or 2022. But at the same time, if I go in there, I can start with a nice base list.
Yeah. It just gets you,
and then go off of that.
Started. It really gets you started,
Really does unblank that page.
Yeah. I love that about it too.
Especially if you're stuck.
It's a really interesting point.
Yeah. Like there's no reason for writer's block anymore. Right. You can start with it's just a but if we go back to that Texas prison thing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And the you can think of like a man in a Texas prison charged with hiding a gun in his rolls of fat. You can kind of really picture that a lot of that fat, right? Yeah. It's like don't even ask where he stored the bullets.
Right. You can keep going.
Or thank God he was in Kansas.
Yeah.
Kansas.
What's that?
I said, thank God he was in Kansas, because.
Why?
Well, thank God he was in Kansas, because that's a life sentence.
I don't know.
What is?
Putting bullets up your ass.
If he got caught doing that.
Pulling bullets. Okay. You're assuming.
There's something that has to be, there's something that has to make it a little more clear.
If you tied in, if you went like, don't even ask where you're storing the bullets, and he was. He goes like, if he was in Kansas, he would have gotten a life sentence. Right. Now we tied that into it coming out of his ass.
Right.
But so that connector, sometimes right now, Braz, is what a lot of comics do is they think to almost the tag, right? The tag or the topper of the joke. Yeah. And they're like, we got to hit it first. Now we can go into the tag or topper. Right. And it's like one of my weaknesses too. I try to be too clever.
Yeah.
I'll write it and I realize I'm being clever here, but I didn't give the audience the information yet.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But I'll notice that in my joke and go, wait, I got to put in this connect. I got to put in another connector here to make sure that they understand exactly what I'm talking about. Right. I got to put in the cup size.
Yeah.
In other words.
Exactly. And that you learned.
That's what I did, Joel.
Yeah, that's what you did, right? Both of us were here going.
And both of you were sitting there going, "That's not funny."
Yeah, we're like,
So
is
then
he okay?
I gotta go back
But
to
we,
my bad
but when we add it's coming out of his ass,
Yeah,
then
then
we
we're
can
like,
now
oh,
say,
yeah, of course.
man, if you do that in Kansas, you get a life sentence.
Right.
love
But
that.
that
And
makes
you
like
still get a
sense
laugh
with-
on
Yeah.
how can I say it came come out of his ass without saying
Without
it's coming
saying-
out of his ass. Just go make a sound effect. You know.
Yeah.
And then if you say it without
like
saying it, that's called comedic irony.
Yeah.
Is
Right.
that one of the structures?
Comedic irony.
Yes, it
exactly.
is.
That's one of the
Like
structures.
shit and shaving, right?
Is that-
That's comedic irony.
I don't know.
Earlier, he said that the song about the rhyme would have been shit.
yeah, in the like in the
Oh,
barrel
yeah,
of
I like it.
shaving
Yeah.
cream, be nice and clean.
Love that. All right. Well, unfortunately we have to end this conversation. It's been really,
Ah.
really great having you on here, and it's so great to see your love of writing comedy. It's really
Oh man, I love it.
inspiring.
Yeah.
So inspiring, and also just your freedom with it. Yes.
His joy of sharing. His
joy
sharing.
of sharing, because you know,
Joe, like,
a lot
the
of
fact that he likes to help comedians be good at what they do. I mean, that's an unbelievable gift, bro.
It
You know
is
what I
a
mean?
great
Like, there's
gift
a
to
lot
get.
Yeah,
of
it's
comedians out there
synergy,
that are
man.
scared
Synergy
to
always
share.
works better than enemy, right? It does.
And they're
I don't
always
think a
scared to
lot of
share
comedians
because they don't
understand
wanna
that.
lose.
I don't think a lot of
Yeah.
comedians understand that. You know what I mean? That like
It's so true.
they think it's some kind of competition between all of us. but
Give.
no.
It always comes back to you.
Yeah. All right.
Look
I
at all
want
the
to.
great information you have and the
Yeah,
way you share it.
So
I think it's great.
if people want to reach out to Jerry, take his courses, what's the website?
Standupcomedyclinic.com.
Thank you. I'm refrained from saying it because I'm sure I would get it wrong. Stand up comedy.
Call back.
You mean like the comic doctor?
Yeah, I've made up all kinds of names for him. But yeah, stand up comedy.
Put that in the show information, Joe.
Yeah, it's also
Yeah,
in the show notes. I think.
Oh, that's perfect. Good typing, man.
think-
Look how quickly you were
Thanks
able
a
to
lot.
produce that
Yeah,
chyron.
I can type.
he's
I can't
pretty good.
remember
He's
shit, but
pretty
I
good.
can type. All right. So let's get this thing going. Thanks, Jerry, for being on the show. We're going to dance it
Thank
out.
you, Jerry.
All right, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Super fun, super fun. All right, and we've got a dance party here with Lexington Lab Band. It's not lap band, lab band. So I don't know. For all those people that want to lose weight, you're going to have to go someplace else. All right, here we go.
Rolls of fat.
Your rolls of fat. All right, here we go. Favorite of octogenarians everywhere, Steely Dan. You guys are great. Turn it up. Dancing if you got 'em, people.
You're everlasting summer and you can see it fading fast. So you grab a piece of something that you think is gonna last. Well, you wouldn't even know a diamond if you held it in your hand. The things you think are precious, I can't understand. Are you reeling in the years? Stowing away the time? Are you gathering up the tears? Have you had enough of mine? Are you
I have no idea what this song means. No idea.
Kind of like Flush, Stone Temple Pilots. You have no idea what they're saying.
No idea, but it's fun.
You've been telling me you're a genius since you were 17. And all the time I've known you, I still don't know what you do. Well, the weekend at the college didn't turn out like you planned. The things that pass for knowledge I can't understand. Are you reeling in the years?
He's a hoarder.
Are you gathering up the tears?
You have a tambourine.
Enough of mine?
All right, everybody. Thanks for being here, Jerry. Thanks, everybody. This has been
Good job,
Lunch
Jerry.
Therapy Interview Friday.
See you later.
Woo! See y'all Tuesday. One more time. Let's get an applause for Jerry.